It's Kansas and Arizona. Noah Fifita versus Jalon Daniels. Both teams battling for bowl eligibility. Can Kansas get it done?
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition, we preview Kansas against Arizona. We get into the Arizona Wildcats scouting report, and we get into our matchups of the game that could certainly determine this one for KU. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can get the Jayhawks a little under a touchdown right now. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So Kansas takes on Arizona Saturday afternoon game, and it's on the road for KU. And both these teams are going for bowl eligibility in this one. Arizona comes in at 5-3. Kansas comes in at 5-4. And it's funny because we always talk about how, in the preseason, there's some games you'll look at and say, okay, this one, I don't know how tough of an opponent that's going to be versus other games where you look at and say, oh, that's going to be a really tough opponent. And then it doesn't end up being that way. Like we thought Kansas State was going to be toward the top of the Big 12. Well, ended up when KU played them and they were 3-4. Obviously didn't end up mattering, but the Arizona game, everybody was saying, oh, Arizona is going to be one of KU's easier opponents and it's a road game, not a bad draw. Well, all of a sudden Arizona's playing really good football. They're 5-3 and they look like a pretty good football team. So it becomes a little more difficult and you never know how it's going to work out. It is interesting, though, as Kansas tries to get to bowl eligibility and tries to kind of save this season in a certain way. It's not going to be easy for KU to do it. You look at these final three games for KU. You get Utah in the finale, you get at Iowa State, and you have this game at Arizona. And what is the best chance for Kansas to get to bowl eligibility? Is it this game? Is it the Iowa State game? Is it the Utah game because it's at home? I think the cases for each and any of those games would be, you would say, okay, I think Arizona is the worst of those three teams. Iowa State beat them by multiple scores. So you would just say, and you figure Utah is the best of the bunch. So therefore Arizona is the easiest game. The argument for the Iowa State one is that you've had success against Iowa State of late. You've beaten Iowa State 3 consecutive times, and you seem to do pretty well in that matchup. The argument for the Utah game is that it is a home game as opposed to these other two being road games. And even though Utah's a really good team, that game's going to be 11 a.m. on Black Friday, week of Thanksgiving. They're going to be traveling on the road, and it's an 11 a.m. game, which means for Utah, it's a 9 a.m. game for their body clocks. Could you come out and I don't know, kind of stun them in a certain way on Thanksgiving week? I think that'd be the argument for all three games. The argument against all three games, I think for the Utah game would just be Utah's the best team, and you're probably going to be like a 10-digit or 10-point underdog. Just kind of depends how you do these next couple of weeks, but are you going to be 7, 10, 14? Like what's going to be the spread? I don't know, but that'll probably be the biggest spread that you're going to face. When you look at the Iowa State one, they're going to be chomping at the bit to beat you after they've lost 3 straight times. And it is senior day for them. And then you look at the Arizona one and you would say, okay, yeah, well, Arizona lost to Iowa State by multiple scores, but the way Arizona State's or the way Arizona is playing right now compared to the way Iowa State's playing right now, I don't know. It feels like Arizona's playing better ball at this point in time. And it feels like with Arizona, they come into this game off of like it's close losses. It's beating opponents. They just blasted Colorado. I don't know. I almost would argue that KU's most winnable game, like the highest percentage I would give them to win any of these games, just me specifically, I think I would actually go with the at Iowa State game over this one specifically for the best chance. But that's not a great place to be if that's KU's best chance to get bowl eligibility. And so I think you get to a certain point where you say, like, this one becomes super important for KU from the standpoint of obviously trying to get to bowl eligibility. The longer it lasts and the longer that is a conversation, you lose these next 2 games and then you're putting all the pressure on the final Utah game. You don't want to be there. But the longer it lasts where you haven't cleared bowl eligibility, the more difficult it becomes because you're almost imposing like self-imposed, pressures onto yourself by the longer you can't accomplish it. Whereas if you can win this one and get to bowl eligibility, to a certain standpoint, you're playing with house money in those last two games where you can play a little bit more free and loose. And so to that standpoint, each game becomes more important as you go. This is such a vital game for KU to where, yes, the goal is to be bowl eligible, but this is your really one opportunity to do something more than just get to 6 wins, but also it makes it increasingly harder, not just because you have one less opportunity, but also the extra pressures you would add if you do end up losing this game. And obviously, Arizona is trying to get to bowl eligibility too. They didn't make a bowl last year, so it's going to be meaningful for them, and they're sitting at 5-3. The line is certainly really jumping in Arizona's favor, and bettors really are starting to kind of pick up seemingly that Wildcats. I think Kansas this year is just 3-6 against the spread so far this season, so they have not been a good team against the spread. I don't know, maybe that's something that kind of comes back down to earth in this game and down the final stretch for KU, but it almost feels like KU is getting overly respected by Vegas right now. Obviously, they came into the year with an over-under win total of 7.5. I think it'd be a surprise at this point if they didn't end up with the under on that one, but certainly something to keep an eye on with that the betting spread that opened around 3.5 and is now closer to 6 at this point in time. All right, let's get into specifically what Arizona brings to the table and our matchups that are going to determine this game. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. College basketball season's back, along with the NBA, NHL's going on, and obviously football's still going. There's no better place to get in on all the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of any of your games or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to who's going to have that fourth quarter comeback. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. So what do the Arizona Wildcats bring to the table as KU tries to get bowl eligibility? Well, Arizona's 5-3 on the year. They're 2-3 in the Big 12. Technically 3-3 because they beat K-State. It counted as a non-con game. It's very stupid. Anyway, they most recently dominated Colorado. That's a bad Colorado team, 52-17. That was on the road after they almost won at Houston the week before that, and they nearly beat an undefeated at this point BYU team. Now, there are two common opponents so far that both teams have played. Arizona and Kansas both played Oklahoma State. Kansas beat Oklahoma State 38-21 last week. Arizona beat Oklahoma State handedly as well, actually by more than Kansas did, 41-13. And then the other common opponent is Kansas State. Kansas got crushed. Arizona beat them. So, and obviously Arizona got them at a better time of the year before they had kind of figured things out at least a little bit more. But, both common opponents, Arizona had a better result than Kansas did, and that certainly draws your eye. Plus, they're playing at home. Their coach is Brent Brennan. He was formerly at San Jose State, had really good success there, took over a tough job in year one at Arizona with the way their previous coach in Jed Fish left to Washington and left kind of the cupboards bare, and it didn't go super great in year one, despite the fact they had, a top 10 pick in Tet McMillan. But he's kind of gotten them back to where they're expecting to be here in year two. And now they're ranked 31st on ESPN SP Plus, where they have the number 36 offense, number 35 defense. Special teams only ranked 109th, though. And out of comparison, KU now on SP Plus is 52nd. They have the number 34 offense, number 76 defense, and number 8 special teams. How about that for Kansas, even after giving up that touchdown to K-State there? ESPN FPI has it a little bit closer. It has Arizona at 45th and Kansas at 51st. You look at some of the personnel for Arizona. They have good QB play. Noah Fifita is certainly a top half of the league quarterback in the Big 12, probably top 5 in the Big 12. I mean, you have, solid quarterbacks all throughout, so I'd have to really think about it and rank it. But point being, he is a good quarterback. That's kind of what matters here, bottom line. They have 2 running backs who are, in terms of total rushing yards, their top 2 in total rushing yards are both averaging over 6 yards a pop. Ismail Mahdi has 530 rushing yards, only 80 carries. So their runners have been very efficient this year, and they really spread it out to the receivers. this is a good receiving core. They don't have maybe that NFL superstar in Ted McMillan anymore, but it's just a lot of like very solid guys who can make you miss. Javon Watley is leading the team with 404 receiving yards. They have 5 different players with 249 or more receiving yards. So they really spread it out. They've got just a very solid group overall. And obviously, whether they're solid or below average or whatever, it probably doesn't really matter because KU's secondary has struggled versus all of them. Oklahoma State didn't have much of a passing attack coming in, and they struggled against Oklahoma State. Arizona is probably going to find some success in the air, I think would be kind of a good bet coming in. On the offensive line, Pro Football Focus, basically they're viewed as like, I guess I would say an above average unit overall. They're number 53 in pass blocking, number 62 in run blocking. So kind of average, slightly above average in both. It makes you an average to above average unit overall. So, that's totally fine. Special teams been a bit of a struggle for them. We mentioned in those rankings, their main kicker is 12 of 18 on field goals. He does have a cannon, though. He made a 57-yard field goal. He has 4 kicks of 40 or more yards, 2 of 50 or more yards. So great leg strength, but not great accuracy. And then you look at the defense for Arizona. They are 45th nationally in sack rate. Again, above average there. They've got 2 linebackers who have 3+ sacks or 3 sacks. No one else has more than 1, but they've had them from a lot of different players. So they don't necessarily have I guess we're going to make an Arizona reference, like a Teddy Bruschi who, is racking up a bunch of sacks on the defensive line for them. But it kind of comes from all over. Like there's certain scheme challenges of what they're going to do. It's less like a David Bailey type situation where, for Texas Tech, David Bailey wrecked the game along with really their whole defensive line. Not to say they don't have good players, like they do, but it's the players and the scheme as opposed to just like a dominant force of a player you can't block, which means I think for the KU offensive line, this is almost more of a mental challenge than it is a physical challenge. It is both, but you got to be on your mentals, I think, in this game against their scheme. They're a solid tackling team, top 45 there on PFF. And I think the biggest strength of their defense is the secondary. They have the number 3 pass coverage grade on Pro Football Focus. We'll get into some more of their really impressive pass defense numbers in a second here. Quarterback deep dive for Arizona. Noah Fifita was riding high. He was an all Pac-12 quarterback in 2023. Arizona wins double-digit games. They beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. And then last year it just fell apart. Again, new coach, you lose a lot of players, and it just fell off for him in a tougher situation. He's not quite all the way back to the stats he put up in 2023, but he certainly is back to being a very solid quarterback. 65% completion rate, over 2,000 passing yards on 8 yards per attempt. All those are solid. 24 total touchdowns of 4 interceptions. That's excellent there. He's got a 72.8 QBR. That's top 30 nationally. And over the last 2 games, that number's at like 90. So he is coming in on a heater into this game. He can run the ball. It's not like the main part of his game. Like if you take out the sack yards, he has over 200 rushing yards. If you add the sack yards, he has under 100 rushing yards. So again, he's not Lamar Jackson necessarily, but like he can run if you give him a lane. He has 3 rushing touchdowns as well. You look at some of the in-depth numbers. He's been about the same on play action versus non-play action. So that's not necessarily something where there's a big split of like, you got to watch out for this over that. It's been about the same there. He has been worse against the blitz. We'll get to more on that later. And this one's not so great to look at because KU has really struggled. I think the Brendan Storesby attack, I think of Avery Johnson. When quarterbacks are have a heavy dosage of throwing over the middle, that has given the KU defense struggles in the passing game. And here comes another quarterback who has a heavy dosage of throws over the middle. 57% of Fifita's passing attempts are in the middle third of the field. And again, the quarterbacks who have been between 50 to 60% of their passing attempts over that middle third, it's really given KU problems so far this year. 5 happy stats for Arizona. Number 1, Arizona is one of 4 teams in the Big 12 who is in the top of the league in points per game and points allowed per game. The only other teams, Texas Tech, Utah, and BYU. Those are 3 really good football teams. I think Arizona is a pretty good football team who's playing well at the right time of year. Arizona is also second in the Big 12 in yards allowed per pass at only 4.4 yards allowed per pass. That's insane to give that up per pass. The only team who's better is Texas Tech at 4.1. They're even ahead of Utah, who's at 4.7. And overall, that leads to Arizona ranking 15th nationally in defensive EPA per play. So we talked about the pass defense, and that leads to the defense overall being very good. But our next happy stat is more about the pass defense. They are the number one pass defense in the Big 12 in yards allowed per pass. They're the number one pass defense in the Big 12 in pass efficiency defense. And they're tied first in the Big 12 in interceptions with 12. They've 8 more than Kansas. So they've triple the amount of interceptions that Kansas has. That is a gigantic edge on paper. And all of that comes together. Arizona is the number 2 pass defense nationally in the country by EPA per play and 4th in success rate. So this is one of the 5 best passing defenses. Pretty standard across the board any way you cut it in the country. Next happy stat, they are 93rd percentile, so very good there in early downs EPA per play defensively. So they do a really good job of scheming things up on those early downs, and then they get you into the 3rd and longs, and it doesn't go well because that pass defense is so good. And then they are 4th in the Big 12 in red zone touchdown percentage allowed. So even when you are getting into their red zone, they're doing a great job of bending but not breaking, which makes sense. If you have really good pass coverage, it's going to be even tighter windows in the red zone, and they're doing a really good job of kind of walling off in those situations. 5 sad stats for Arizona. The special teams. They have the worst field goal percentage in the league, 12 of 19 as a team, and they are second to last in the league in net yards per punt. So this has not been a good special teams specialist unit. KU, by the way, is second best in net yards per punt in the league. There's a 6-yard difference in net yards per punt for Kansas to Arizona. So if you add that up, if both teams punted twice, which is like not a huge number necessarily, it depends how many possessions the game is, but over 4 punts, 2 for one team, 2 for the other, that would be about a 24-yard difference. That is something that could add up over the course of a game. Arizona's also been sacked 19 times this year. That ranks 13th in the Big 12. And overall, they're -2 in sack differential. Sacks recorded by your defense minus sacks allowed by the offense. KU's +1, so slight edge for KU on that on paper. Arizona's also 12th in the Big 12 in points per red zone trip. So we talked about their defense doing a really good job bending but not breaking. They haven't punched it in enough offensively. They are 13th in the Big 12 in red zone touchdown percentage on offense. We'll see if KU, who has not been a very good red zone defense so far, can kind of wall up on an Arizona offense that has had some struggles at times. Next, sad stat for the Wildcats, they are 90th in EPA per play nationally, passing the football when they're on offense. That's not 90th percentile. That is 90th ranked in the country in EPA per play passing the football. So I don't think that tells the whole story about Fifita. I do think he's better than that, but maybe that means they're getting sacked too much because that kind of goes into it as well. And then they are 96th in EPA per play nationally against the run and 127th nationally in success rate against the run. Now it's interesting. You look at the yards allowed per run, Arizona ranks in the top 5 of the Big 12, but the EPA per play and the success rate are bad. And the success rate is the one that's way lower than even the EPA per play. What that tells me is that Arizona doesn't give up a lot of big runs. And on a lot of down-to-down basis, Arizona's pretty good against the run. But whenever opposing teams are like, hey, it's 3rd and 3, we got to get 3 yards, they're giving up 3 yards, and that's kind of what that tells me, that Kansas is going to have an opportunity to have a successful running game. They're going to need it because the pass defense is really good. Let's get further into those matchups of the game. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for joining us on this episode of LOJ. You can tune in to Locked On College Basketball for your second listen every day. Get ready for the KU North Carolina game or all of the college basketball action this season, as well as Locked On College Football for your third listen every day as well. And you can catch up on everything going on this weekend. College football playoff rankings came out earlier this week as well. All right, matchups for Kansas versus Arizona. First down. Can KU actually cover and get off the field? I don't mean covering the spread. I mean, I guess that'd be nice if they did that too. But I mean covering in the back end on their defense and get off the field when it's 3rd and long and actually force the stop. Arizona's only 11th in the Big 12 in 3rd down conversion rate. But you enter Kansas, who has had trouble covering, especially on those key downs and those late downs. How many times have other teams converted those 3rd and longs against the KU defense? It didn't feel like it got any better against Oklahoma State. In fact, their first touchdown that put them up 7-0 was one of those situations. Meanwhile, Noah Fifita is coming off arguably his 2 best games of the season. So, KU can't afford to get into a shootout, I don't think, in this one. Like, I think a lot of other games, like, I don't know, maybe that would be okay for Kansas, although they lost one to Cincinnati, lost one to Missouri. But I look at the Arizona passing defense. If you're giving up a lot of points, it's going to be hard for you to match because how good that passing defense is. So I don't think you can afford it. And furthermore, I don't want to see the soft coverage stuff. Like, so Noah Fifita is at 7 yards per attempt this year when blitzed, compared to 8.7 yards per attempt when he is not blitzed. That's a big difference. Fifita is at a 58% completion rate when he's blitzed. He's at a 70% completion rate when not. This should be a game where KU is aggressive, dialing up the blitz. And I don't care if it's, hey, we were overly aggressive and we gave up a couple extra deep balls. Guess what? You're already giving up deep balls. You're already giving up big plays in the passing game. So why not be aggressive and be like, hey, we're probably going to already give up big plays in the passing game anyway. Might as well try to get an extra sack or two. Might as well try to get an extra turnover or two out of it than we're already forcing. Just my opinion. All right, second down. Can KU run the ball? Because passing, like I said, might be tough. Arizona's a top 5 pass defense in the country. If you look at coverage grade, yards allowed per attempt, EPA per play, success rate, just across the board. Would you believe me if I told you Pro Football Focus gives Kansas the number 7 run blocking team in the country? I certainly wouldn't. And I don't know that I do, even after seeing it. They also have KU as the number 121 pass blocking team, to which, granted, it was a disaster versus Tech, not great versus Mizzou, and there have been some other moments where it hasn't been great. But I feel like both of those are like too far on the spectrum down the lane. Like, I feel like it would make more sense if you said KU's run blocking is closer to like the 40th best team in the country and KU's pass blocking is closer to like the 80th or 90th best team in the country. But anyway, point being that maybe there's more there than we're seeing. I don't know. We just saw Daniel Highshaw, Le'Shawn Williams have a good, kind of duo game for KU against Oklahoma State. I think you need them to rush for at least 150 combined in this one, and it would also help, keep your defense off the field and help kind of go against what's an elite passing defense so far this season. Third down is the interception differential. This on paper is maybe the biggest advantage Arizona has coming in. I mean, obviously it's the pass defense, like Arizona's pass defense, elite, KU's pass defense, not at all. But one of the big areas this leads to is interceptions. Arizona has 3 times the interceptions that Kansas has. I don't know that Kansas can go on the road against a solid Arizona squad and win this game without winning the turnover battle, at least being even in it, right? So, I mean, if KU gets the same amount of interceptions as Arizona does, is that a win because you're neutralizing essentially one of the strengths they have on paper? That means there's a lot on Jalon Daniels to play an efficient game against a pass defense that's really good, not panic, not throw interceptions, but still be able to hit some big plays. It also probably means that, hey, maybe there is a time this game, given how good their pass defense is, that Jalon is going to throw a pick. So can your defense get one back? Which that becomes a struggle because, I mean, there's overall the KU defense isn't forcing turnovers, which makes sense, right? You got to be around the ball to force turnovers. And how many times are guys running wide open? You're not going to get an interception if you're 5 yards away from the receiver, right? Kansas has only forced 2 or more turnovers in a game twice this year. One of them was week 0 against Fresno State. KU has forced 1 or 0 turnovers every game in the last 5. Kansas has only forced 3 turnovers over the last 5 games. And Kansas only has 1 interception in the last 5 games. They've only had 2 interceptions in the last 8 games. This has been really bad for Kansas. They've not been getting those interceptions. If you can have the same amount of interceptions that they get, I think that's a win for KU. Whether that's just because Jalon threw 0 or, you got one back. Fourth down is finishing drives in the red zone. Only BYU, Houston, and West Virginia have been better at preventing touchdowns in the red zone than Arizona. So very good at preventing touchdowns. And it definitely feels like every game there's a drive or two where KU has not punched it in, that you're like, I wish they would have been able. And you would be correct, in looking at the stats. They're not one of the worst teams in the Big 12, but certainly middle of the pack to below average. KU ranks 11th in the Big 12 in points per red zone trip, and they are 9th in touchdown percentage there. So, by both metrics, they're on the bottom half of the Big 12 in how they're converting their points and getting those touchdowns in the red zone. This is not one of those games you can afford that. Points are going to be at a premium against this pass defense, and obviously easier said than done against the Arizona defense that is good at doing that. But going on the road, you can't have multiple drives stop to a field goal. I would just say this, I think you get 1 max. Everybody gets 1. And honestly, it might take 0 for Kansas to win this game, but you get one. You get one drive, you can get in the red zone and get a field goal. Again, might take zero. But anything more than that, I don't think you're winning this game. And when you look at Arizona, I think, with what they've done against the run and trying to punch it in the red zone, I think this goes back to the idea. Can KU impose some strength at the line of scrimmage? There was a lot of talk this week about playing a sixth offensive lineman. KU's beat up at the tight end spot. Well, the offensive lineman playing a sixth guy should give you more push on the offensive line. Is that something Kansas can do? And can this be one of their best rushing games of the season to try to pull off this upset on the road against Arizona? That'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere that you get your podcasts, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. We'll see you next time for a little KU North Carolina preview right here on LOJ.